We can't hear what you're saying.
All right, try it now. Sue, can you hear us?
I can hear you now, yes.
All right, I'm gonna restart from the top so we get the record straight. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Town of Newington Conservation Commission for December 17th, 2024. Will the recording secretary please take the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Bashand,
Here.
Commissioner Conway, Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Ostrowski,
Here.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Here.
Commissioner Sadil, Commissioner Wemett,
Here.
Chairman Zelik.
Here. All right, I am going to seat Commissioner Ostrowski for Commissioner Conway and, excuse me, she may be late, so I will seat Commissioner Ostrowski for Commissioner Ellis if he does not arrive. With that said, we have enough commissioners present for a quorum. We'll move on to our organizational meeting. First item is election of officers for 2025. Do we have any nominations for the chair?
I'd like to nominate Jeff Zelik.
I'll second it. I'll accept. Any other nominations for the chair?
This is your chance.
Just want to go on the record that I said previously that I would nominate Commissioner Sadell, but that was only because we weren't sure that you were going to be here. I know he's not even here, but I'm still nominating you
Yeah, I
in
wish,
light of the fact that you're back. So
yeah, I wish Commissioner Sidell was here because I would also like to have him nominated. All right, seeing no other nominations, go for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
abstentions? Any opposed?
I heard
Okay,
somebody on there.
that's Alan.
Oh,
All right, we'll move on to election for vice chair. A nomination for vice chair, please.
Alan, Commissioner Paskowitz here. Yes, I would like to nominate Andrea Sadell.
All right, point of order, Chris, can we take a nomination on Andreas without him being here to accept?
Traditionally, as I understand it, it is his right to accept the nomination or to refuse it.
Yeah,
Have we heard anything from him about a desire to be vice chair? He would be a great candidate if Dave
Anyone?
chooses not to.
anyone hear anything?
I mean, it
from
doesn't have to
Andreas?
be decided this evening anyway, does it?
It does.
It does?
This is your annual meeting portion of your commission.
All right, unfortunately, Commissioner Sidell is not present and not able to accept the nomination. Can I get another nomination for vice chair, please?
I'll nominate Commissioner Wemett since he's done it already. He's got some experience.
I'll second that. Commissioner Wemett, you accept?
Yes.
All right, any other
Excuse me,
nominations?
Commissioner Sadil is on.
Oh, Commissioner Sidell,
Here, I thought I heard him.
very good. We were just discussing you. You have been nominated for vice chairmanship.
Oh,
Would you accept?
I accept.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
All right, wait a minute.
Commissioner
Who
Wemett.
made the motion and who seconded?
Commissioner Bashant made the motion.
No,
Commissioner
Commissioner.
It's for the nomination. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It was Commissioner Paskowitz made
Paskowitz
the
made
nomination.
yeah.
Commissioner Wemett did the second. All right, so we have Commissioner Wemett had accepted for vice chair, and also Commissioner Sadell. Are you accepting?
Yes.
Okay, then we will have an election for vice chair. We'll do a roll call vote, Sue, if we could, for vice chair for Commissioner Sadell.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashand,
Yes.
Commissioner Ostrinsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitch,
Yes.
Commissioner Wemett,
Yes.
Chairman Zelik.
Yes. Okay, so it appears unanimous. He has the majority vote. Congratulations, Commissioner, on your appointment as Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Moving on, we need nomination for Secretary. Has Bernadette joined yet?
She stated
No.
that she was going to be in a meeting and she may
Yeah.
be in later. That was an email that we all read.
Right.
Yes, correct to the email, and no, I do not see that she has either signed up as a participant yet.
All right. Then can I take nominations for Secretary?
I'll nominate Commissioner Paskowitz.
I decline.
Okay.
Does they have to be a full member or can they be
It should be
alternates?
a full member.
I believe the officers have to be full members.
Oh, boy. Yeah, oh, that's right. We have Commissioner Wemett available. I was worried it was gonna come back to me, so thank you.
I'll second that
I was just
nomination.
about to nominate you.
Same
Thank you
here.
for not, too much reading.
All right. Any other nominations for Secretary?
Who was the second?
I was the second.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no other nominations, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions? Seeing none, congratulations. All right, we have our new officers. Moving on, setting of the regular meeting dates for 2025. First, you have a list of proposed dates. I think we put in front of the commission. Everyone had a chance to look at those. Have any objections to those dates? Any concerns?
They're basically the third Tuesday of every month.
And those are all normal town hall days. We're open for business.
Yes, I did check against the calendar for that.
All right, with that said then, can I get a motion to accept the proposed dates for 2025?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Good, that was a second from Commissioner Ostrinsky.
Second.
Anderson, sorry. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Moving on to acceptance of minutes. This is the meeting minutes for November 19th, 2024. Any corrections to the minutes that anyone would like to make? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to accept the meeting minutes from
So-
November 19th as published?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Omet. Can we get a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bachant. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone abstaining? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. Moving on then. We have our public hearing for application 24-13. This is construction of 44-unit residential project and associated infrastructure within the Upland Review area at 2020 Kitts Lane. I think for all intents and purposes, we just refer to this as 226 Kitts Lane, because there are multiple addresses listed here. The applicant is Patrick Snow, owner of Kitts Lane Apartments LLC. Is the applicant online or present?
He is not as yet, but his engineer is here.
Okay.
And Ian is,
And his soil scientist is on Zoom,
Very
as
good.
is George Logan.
Mr. Logan is also online?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so we understand that there were some modifications to the site plan based on the report from REMA.
Yes, so good evening, Danville, professional engineer on behalf of the applicant. We, as I understand, the applicant discussed a possible new concept with George Logan, presented him with this plan. And so Ian can speak a little bit to the impacts to the wetlands, or the changes in impacts. And I'll just point out that some of the elements to the upgradient of the wetlands have been removed. So the roadway no longer wraps around the wetlands, and the retaining wall has been eliminated from the plans. So there's been a 10% reduction in impervious area, and a reduction of 3 units. 4 units, going from 44 to 40 units.
All right. Originally, that area was part of the upland review area, which was going to be deforested for the construction. What's the plan for that upland review area now?
There are no proposed elements in this area. You can see the roadway ends here and here. So there's no changes. There's no improvements proposed in this area.
Okay, so no
No
activity
excavation.
at all?
Correct.
Okay.
I had one just comment right away. There's,
Commissioner Bashan.
with this new concept B, there's no delineation of the wetland or the upland review area from the property to the north. It's on your other plans, but it's not on this one.
The property to the north, you're talking about the Stop and Shop?
Yeah, the
Site.
water course. There's a water course there. On your other plans, you show an upland review, a regulated area that bisects this property.
Hmm.
Am I wrong? I could be
No,
wrong.
it's still there. I mean, it's
on
not
the-
displayed.
It's the small dashed line.
I don't see it there. There's no-
Right, but I believe Commissioner Bashan's point is, the map does not show the upland review area for that water.
There's
course.
no small dash line either.
Correct. That's correct. You're talking about,
If you're saying that the
Just
water,
on this,
cour-
just on this one new plan.
okay. If you're saying that the water course along the Stop and Shop property isn't shown, it wasn't shown previously either.
correct. It was not shown on the previous site plan specifically.
It's on all the other plans I have. Maybe the water course is not shown, but the upland, the regulated area line is the 100-foot buffer.
The upland review area is shown.
Right here.
That arc line.
Mhm.
Okay, if you could just read into the record what page you're looking at?
Oh, I see what you're asking about. The one from the other side of the property overlap.
Yes.
My brother's from.
It's still a regulated area, correct?
Yeah.
this.
And so we're all on the same page here.
So there's a water course here, and therere's a review line that comes around here.
Right.
Site plan. It was never shown on the site plan. So I can take that as a comment to include on the next site plan on submission.
That's usually a requirement, right?
Absolutely.
I only have 2 of your old plans here, but, or actually 1 of them or 2 of them. But I thought I saw it on some of the other pages from the previous plan.
All right, again, I'm remember seeing what page that is into the record.
Right.
This is what WTL is, the inland wetland limits, number 1. Dated, I don't see the date on here. Okay. And it shows the wetland or the limits of the upland review area. Coming from the north. The only reason it matters to me because it impacts something I'll bring up and coming up.
No, that's a good point.
All right, you want to talk about your concern?
No, not right now. I think, did you have a further presentation? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's the changes made are really just limited to this area right here. They kind of explain themselves, and
If not, I'll continue with my concerns.
Do we want to ask George if he wants to comment at this point?
Yeah, so I'd like to hear from Mr. Logan if he could review his report for us. And Mr. Logan, were you aware that there's an additional upland review area to the north along that water course on the northern perimeter?
George Logan for the record. No, I was not aware of that. I know there's a detention basin there, and very often the detention basins are considered regulated areas if they're wet. But that's as much as I knew.
I mean, to be honest, it overlaps most of the existing one, but part of it doesn't. And that's part of what I wanted to get into.
Yeah, well, looking at this map that's on the screen right now, my concern is if we have some paving, impervious material that is going to be proposed to be placed into that upland review area.
It is
right
part of
now
that
we see-
hammerhead there.
Right, the hammerhead now appears as though it would be in that upland review area.
So we're talking about two regulated areas.
Yeah. Chris, if you wouldn't mind, so what John pointed out, do we know on the town maps if that is a review area?
It doesn't show on our map. It shows on the Stop and Shop site plan from when it was originally constructed.
Okay, and did it get picked up on Ian Cole's report when he surveyed the land?
I cannot say off my top of my head.
All
if
right,
it
well, let's
was.
ask Mr. Cole, because Mr. Cole.
He
I
is
believe, is
online. Yep.
So, Mr. Cole, did you take into account that upland review area or the possible upland review area to the north that runs along the Stop and Shop property?
So yeah, for the record, Ian Cole, professional soil scientist. Yeah, the upland review area for that feature would extend onto this property. That feature was not flagged because it's not on this property. So I guess that's the answer. Yeah.
Right, it's not on this property, but the upland review area does extend into this property.
Correct.
It's still a regulated area.
So it is a regulated area for this site plan.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think anyone's debating that. I think everyone's in agreement.
To Commissioner Bashan's point, it's appeared on all the other sheets. It's just an oversight here.
I thought I
We'll
saw
include
on
it in the rest of the.
Oh, I was right. It was on the other sheet.
Yeah.
Are you saying it was or it wasn't? I'm
No,
sorry.
it was. It was
Yeah.
excluded from the site plan, but the rest of the set showed
Yeah, I thought I saw it.
the,
All right, so you're proposing a revision to this site plan?
correct.
So
So the site,
if, Chris, if we are to, based on the clock, we're supposed to close this public hearing tonight.
No, we can have one more extension.
We can have one more extension?
Yes.
Okay. So
And I have discussed that with Pat and he's agreed to it. I wish he was here tonight to agree to it again for the commission on the record. Because ours has only been a verbal communication.
All right, would you?
And he
be
is
able-
expected to be here by 7:30 at the latest.
Okay, so we'll wait for Mr. Snow to show up before we request that extension. If they need to make another adjustment to the site plan.
Last month, he sent me an email, so I could have read that in too, but we didn't do that this time. This is a last minute delay on his part, something to do with a family matter.
so if I may, I'll just explain a little bit about the proposed changes. These units here, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, have been removed from the site plan as you see in front of you. These, the number of units here has been reduced to increase the setback from the wetlands. And let's see, so that's what you see in this plan here, an increase in this setback. There's a decrease in the total disturbance in this, what I suspect is an upland review area, to your point. Let's take a look there and see what. Yeah, you're talking about sort of this area right here. So there's been in this iteration of the site plan, there's a reduction in the sort of impact in this area. There's no buildings constructed here. Less excavation.
For Dan, if I could just interject for a second. Globally speaking, I think for the commission's benefit here, stemming from Mr. Logan's review of this application, Pat basically, went back to the redesign and figured out, Mr. Logan's, primary recommendations, and George can correct me if I have any of this wrong. Essentially, this wetland feature, if you're looking at it, if the commission remembers, the western side of it, that side's kind of beat up a little bit. It was the side that favored the existing development of the two houses that are in the process of being removed on the property, and the eastern side of it, which was kind of naturally occurring forested landscape. And so the concern, right, was developing this road around the wetland was going to starve the wetland. It was going to change the hydrology of the receiving wetland above it. And so long story short, Pat went back to essentially the fire marshal to find out, if he could have kind of a hammerhead configuration or a turnaround to accommodate those vehicles, which was a primary driver of having the loop road. And getting sign off, I believe my understanding is that he did talk to them, had a positive conversation, and was able to get kind of at least a verbal sign off on the fact that they would allow that. That being said, Pat was able to, as we heard previously, reduce the number of units, lose that road. So essentially the recommendation for Mr. Logan was, on the eastern side of that wetland that was more sensitive, if you could maintain a 50 or an 80-foot buffer. So Pat, in essence, just did away with all the activities altogether. So any of the activities that were originally proposed in that upper watershed that received that wetland, they're now gone. So essentially all the paved areas, everything is going to be moved to to be treated. And to that point, the other major issue or concern that Mr. Logan had brought up was the original proposed location for the stormwater treatment. The soil testing basically showed that there was high ledge in that area. We had additional soil testing elsewhere on the property that was more accommodating. So the engineer was able to shift that location up north along the roadside where they had suitable soils to demonstrate, that the soils over there are better receiving for that. And then finally, the last addition that Mr. Logan had said was, if you're able to do some of these modifications and remove some of those activities, we still would recommend that even on that eastern side, I'm sorry, the western side of the wetland, even though it was a little bit beat up previously and was kind of in that zone of disturbance, that there probably should be kind of a robust restoration and planting plan to go along with that to kind of soften up the edge between the wetland and the development. And to that point, Pat reached out to a gentleman, Justin Russo, who's a landscape architect, who did develop a planting schedule, a concept plan that included, I believe it was something upward of like 70 shrubs and some other zones that interspersed it with some native planting seed mixes. So I believe that's included in the application. Those are kind of the three big ones. So the reduction in units, the removal of the road, the relocation of the stormwater to a suitable area, and then the addition of the planting plan, kind of. So for context, those are the three big changes.
So just, I want to say on the record that the landscaping plan was received by my office, but not in time to include in the packet that you guys received.
Okay.
So I have a copy upstairs, but we didn't get them in
Include
time.
that for the next meeting.
Absolutely.
If we have an extension. All right, I'd like to hear from Mr. Logan, if he could walk us through his report, the things he found and areas of concern.
I certainly can do that. And so what I'll try to do is to sort of summarize the major concerns and then open it to the commission to ask me specific questions. Obviously, in my report, I have a little more specifics. I've done some calculations regarding watersheds and impact within the upland review area, et cetera. But as you've probably heard me before, the major issues as far as impacts to wetlands and watercourses are the ones that are physical. And at the top of the list, in my view, in this particular situation, the physical impact that this wetland would have seen is the change in hydrology. Very difficult to kind of emulate exactly and replicate exactly the hydrological conditions to sort of hillside seepage areas, if you will, and even though they're seasonal. So that was the big the big take home, I think that the applicant heard that loudly and eliminated that loop road, eliminated the retention basin, eliminated those units. So as far as hydrology is concerned, I have no more concerns. That has been addressed because that's all the water that's feeding this wetland is coming from the areas that they've now vacated. And also the other concern that I had, there's corollary, which is also can be a physical impact, and that has to do with the buffers, the permanent buffers to the wetlands, because if they're not sufficient, obviously that can lead to physical impacts, both during construction phase and also during the post-construction phase. I would say that that's mostly been addressed, but it's still a work in progress because one of the things that I haven't seen yet, I mean, this plan is great. It's a wonderful step in the right direction, in my view, but it's lacking detail. So I'm sure that's going to be happening, and that's what's probably going to necessitate for us to go to the next meeting if we get if the extension is granted by the applicant. So I think as far as wetland buffers, we're still in process, and linked to that is just the mitigation that I would recommend and would love to see here, and that is how do we the buffers that we have left, and some of them have moved around, some of them are large and there's no issues there. There's some pinch points still there that we're not going to be able to fetter exactly until the grading plan is put together, because if you see the northern K turn for the apparatus, that's into the hillside, and so we probably want to see what the grading is going to be there, and also on the south side also. And then the mitigation plan, I saw the concept. Again, in progress, a step in the right direction. Myself, I think we can do a little better as far as detailing exactly what's going to happen there. But that's something that I'm sure can be worked out, because I'm looking for not just enhancement and strengthening of the buffers that remain, especially where they're closer to the units. Again, remembering that if you put a diagonal across this wetland, sort of in a northeast to southwest direction, that almost splits the hillside wetlands from the lower wetlands being the ones that, as Ian called them, and I would agree, they're a lot less functioning and have been impacted, whereas the other portion is much more pristine, doesn't have a lot of invasives, and really that's the portion of the wetland that provides most of the functionality for the entire wetland. So we still have, I think, a little work to do. So what I would love to see is the final grading plan, a little bit more of an enhancement on the mitigation, and I would certainly can provide some recommendations. I would want to go and not only deal with what's happening just outside of the wetland boundary as far as the wetland buffer and its enhancement, but also what's happening within the wetland in certain areas where we can cull out. And I think that was part of the plan that I remember that Mr. Cole had put forward. So we might want to detail that a little more. We have some Japanese knotweed. That's obviously a major concern, and that's at the edge of the wetland. So we'd like to figure how that's going to play in with the buffer enhancement, because the removal of Japanese knotweed has quite some challenges. So certain things would probably need to be done in that area that are not the typical things that you would do in enhancement of a buffer. So I can certainly get into a detail with that. So that's kind of where we're at now. As far as the water quality, as long as they have an area that's going to allow for the infiltration of the water quality volume, or the retention, infiltration of the retention volume based on the 2024 manual, I think we're good there, as long as there's good pretreatment, and there is, because we have the hydrodynamic separators. So that's, I think, off the table as far as a concern for me, even with downstream situations, because I believe they're following the 2024 manual in that regard. But again, we have a little more work to do, and so that's going to be hopefully come over the next couple of weeks, and I can certainly do a review, and I wouldn't have any problems with, again, through the commission and through your staff, put forth some recommendations as far as what I would think would be reasonable mitigation for the site. So that's kind of the global picture of where we are at this point, I think.
Okay, are you ready to take questions from the commissioners?
Absolutely.
All right, commissioners,
Commissioner Pasquich, I have my hand up.
go ahead, Commissioner Paskowitz.
Welcome back. I'm gonna call you doctor. Do you have a PhD?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, we'll call you doctor anyway. Nonetheless, going back to the soils on this site, in a report, not exclusively to your report, but somewhere in the reports that were submitted in the beginning, there was a term of soils being of hard pan type. Is that correct?
Yes, we have some hard pan soils.
About 2 Sundays ago, I took the forthwith determination to walk up that slope from Stop and Shop parking lot. There's like a pathway that goes straight up. I didn't dare turn around and look back because I was about 100 feet above Stop and Shop. And where I walked, aside from the leaves, the side of it, the ground was solid. I don't mean frozen, solid. Is that the hard pan we're speaking to?
No, these are fine grained soils that are and Ian can talk about that too also. A lot of, rocks and boulders in the landscape. So that kind of gives the impression that this is hard. They're shallow too, so the hard pan's not far from from the surface of the soil. So, and because they're silty or fine texture, they give the, everything kind of washes off, and they give the impression of kind of very, very hard land. And it is. It's not, certainly it's not an outwash soil, sandy soils where you can just dig easily. And I'm sure Ian can tell you how difficult it was for him to delineate this wetland in this area. A lot of digging in order to determine where the wetlands are.
Speaking to the wetlands, I took quite a walk up above and to the east, near that site that holds construction equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to locate flags for the wetland. I only saw one purple flag and I saw a couple flags, but other than that, I don't know if the leaf cover was covering them, but I did not see any flags delineating a wetland. And I walked quite a bit around there for about 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah, so you're right. I was lucky enough that I was probably there when I was able to find most of the flags. Some of them were on the ground, so I had to fish them out from the ground itself, and then I tied back a few back, but they were kind of starting to be a little threadbare. But I was able to find, I think I put in my testimony, probably more than 60 to 70% of the wetland flags. So I was happy enough to find what I found, and at the end of the day, it all made sense to me. So I didn't have an issue with knowing where the wetland was.
And I'm sure that was before the leaf drop from the oaks.
Yes, I could find the flags that were on the ground. Yes.
Most of the trees I saw up there were large standing timber of oak. 90% of the leaves on the ground were oak. And these are substantially DBH
Absolutely.
diameter, like 2 feet and more.
Mm-hmm.
Concern is the loss of any of these timbers that are significantly mature, but not to the point where they're deteriorating. Are we going to lose some of that timber?
Yeah, some of the timber will be lost, but a significant amount of the timber that was of large DBH, like maybe close to 3 feet, some of them were in that upper slope.
Yes,
The activities have been taken away.
that's good to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no further questions.
Okay, just for the record, let the record show that the applicant, Mr. Snow, arrived at 7:35 PM.
That is correct. Thank you. I thought there was an election. I was
went
watching my son's
well.
basketball game. You guys are the most efficient commission I know. Most times commissions I go to them and get started before 8 o'clock. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bouchard, you had a question for Mr. Logan?
Question for Mr. Logan and then a statement for the record. George, do we have, is there a rating system for like the value of a wetland, like a 1 through 10 grade, or like what is the, how would we rate this in terms of flora and fauna? Like, let's say a vernal pool was a 10, or a wetland that stored water and prevented flooding downstream was a 10. Is there any rating system like that?
That's a very good question. How much time do you have? So, here's the thing.
But then I should just cut to the chase. How would you rate this one?
So the applicant, through their wetlands and soil scientists, have put out a report that has provided a rating or a functional value analysis. And I think that's already in the record. And what we do nowadays, we used to go low, moderate, high, all that. There used to be valuation methods that would do 1 to 10, like you said. That's gone to the wayside. And what we do now is we use a lot of professional judgment, and we use what's called a descriptive approach, which is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers bona fide accepted methodology. And what it does, it gives you some general ratings by saying, okay, this is a principal value. So it's a wildlife habitat is a principal value. And then you have secondary values or functions. Say educational potential would be a secondary in some cases. And then you have ones that are not appreciably there. So, flood control, there's not little flood control that happens in this particular wetland, say. So I agreed, generally speaking, that southeastern portion of the wetland that comes up the hillside is the portion of the wetland that offers or confers most of the functions and values to this wetland. And the other portion, not so much, because it has been impacted. It does have invasive species, and you can see the impacts that have happened there over time. So that's where the professional judgment comes in. So you can say, okay, this portion of the wetland, we need to protect that as much as possible. This portion of the wetland, we still need to protect it, but not as much. So that's kind of where we end up going with the ratings. It's professional judgment. So if you ask me in a particular function or value, I can give you more information. And that's what the descriptive approach does. It forces you to kind of write out why you believe that something is a secondary function or value, why something is a principal function of value. Now, honestly, most of us wetland scientists don't sit down and get to that. We use our professional judgment. We've evaluated and assessed hundreds of wetlands over the years, some of us thousands. And so we're able to kind of say, okay, this makes sense because I see all these characteristics. Now, for wildlife habitat, I see seasonal flooding, I see seepages, I see the diversity of an abundance of certain vegetation, the structure of the vegetation, the juxtaposition of this wetland with nice habitat above, in this particular case, et cetera. And that comes up to say, okay, this is a principal, wildlife habitat is a principal function. So again, we've gone away from ratings and we use this other approach.
So, so if I gather correctly, where we remove this development up, down gradient of the steepest slopes, that was your highest value area.
That is correct. And for a number of reasons, again, because we're looking not just at the sheer functions and values and what the impact would be, those, obviously that's important, but we're looking at, the physical impacts pre-construction and, during construction and after construction. So hydrology was a big one. If we mess up the hydrology, then we mess up the entire wetland. So that's why that was the major focus in my review, is to make sure that we don't mess up with the hydrology, which is especially for the slopey wetlands.
And by your pinch point, I think that's a good term. I think I know what you mean. It's just where the development just comes so close to the actual wetland boundary.
Correct. There's still a few pinch points, and I think we kind of need to look at those a little more carefully. But we can't until such time as, the final grading plan, which I'm sure is going to move some things around a little bit, and show us what's going to happen. And then we can do a review. For instance, the pinch point on the south hammerhead, I guess you would call it. Once you put the grading there, you might be right up against the wetland. Now, the wetland is slightly above there, but that's another reason why you might want to look at that a little more carefully and provide a little more room there, so you're not siphoning away from the wetland. And again, once you see the grading, it will make a lot more sense than me just looking at lines. Here's one line, here's another line.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions for Mr. Logan.
All right. I do have a question for Mr. Logan regarding hydrology. I believe our September 17th meeting, you mentioned that you observed high water marks on the trees in the wetland, which indicated seasonal flooding. I believe the National Wetlands Inventory also indicates that this is a temporarily flooded area due to seasonal flooding. And I've heard comments from the public and from town staff that this is a known flooding area. We see flooding coming out onto Kitts Lane. It's been raised as a concern, but I don't see anything in the wetlands report or in your report regarding a floodplain. So if there's seasonal flooding and it's chronic, I would imagine that there has to be a floodplain involved here, or am I incorrect?
Okay, so the hydrology of this wetland is seasonally flooded in this lower portion, and seasonally saturated for the rest of it. And of course, it will be temporarily flooded when it rains, right? And if you look at how the wetland works, this is sort of a pass flow wetland. So the wetland receives as much water as it can handle, and then it passes it through. And you remember, if you were on the field, that there's a ditch that has been dug years and years ago. It's kind of filled, that siphons that water out into a broader area, which is not a wetland. So you don't really have a floodplain here. Usually floodplains are the ones that are associated with, perennial watercourses. So in this particular case, yes, you have extra water that's coming through the system, but the engineer will tell you, and again, I'm not an engineer, but I can understand hydraulics a little bit, is that this water is being handled and passed through in a way that it doesn't cause flooding on site. Who would want that? Or flooding off site. But again, you might want to have the engineer address how that flow through water during a large storm is handled.
Okay, so, well, my concern here is because the buffer between the wetlands boundaries and these proposed apartment buildings is so small that if there is seasonal flooding, that flooding, we should establish where that flooding footprint is to see if it overlaps any of the proposed buildings. My concern is, we've not addressed that at all.
Yeah, that's a valid question, and I'm not the one to really be answering that, because I didn't design the handling of the water through the site.
Okay, so then we'll circle back to the engineer and ask him about, the flood footprint once you're done. Okay, any other questions, commissioners, for Mr. Logan?
Mr. Chairman, if
Commissioner
I may.
Siddall?
Yes,
Yep,
please. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Siddall.
Question for Mr. Logan. With this revised plan, how are the changes in the erosion control plan, both during construction and after construction? Are there any recommendations there?
Well, I probably would have to see what the final plan looks like as far as erosion, because I think some things are going to have to be moved around. They've moved some buildings, they've added buildings in other places. There's some areas that there's substantial changes that have happened. So once I look at that, I can tell you a general thing, and that is that these are fine grained soils, so that basically they're a little more erodible than, say, a sandy soil. So that's something that probably one has to look a little more carefully. And I think we might have discussed that, in certain areas it might be important, especially if there's construction that's above wetlands. If you have, you're an equal, if you have a big watershed that's going towards the wetland during construction, you might want to add some additional measures. And some of the things we usually like to do is to provide what we call sill socks, which is a secondary control. And those usually, you can either put them before or after the sill fence or the primary perimeter control. Those are usually filled with compost or bark mulch or things like that. So they provide a little bit of additional filtration. And then the sill fence, the primary sill fence, as I've said, does 75% reduction of total suspended solids. And if it did any more, it wouldn't be able to pass water. So you need that secondary when you have a wetland nearby that's sensitive. And so let's look at what the final plan looks like with these amendments, and we might be able to make some additional recommendations.
But the silt sock is more of a temporary during the construction phase.
Correct.
But as far as when all said and done, everything's built according to blueprint, you don't feel any other erosion issues beyond that, mitigations?
No, once things are stabilized, then you should be fine. I mean, as long as they're not concentrating water, so that in the post-construction, if you concentrate water in a particular spot, you might erode it even though it's stabilized. So as long as that doesn't happen, I think you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Logan, in your preliminary report, before you issued this written report, you had raised concerns about the mineral content of the water coming off the hill, and that possibly, providing certain conditions to the wetlands for, its characteristics and its function. With that said, the concern about the minerals, the other materials that are now being introduced around this wetland in such close proximity, and those materials being the concrete, the asphalt, the road beds, all this foreign material that's being introduced so close to the wetlands, does that pose a threat? And I'm thinking along the lines of leaching through the groundwater, since this is a groundwater supplied wetland.
So the groundwater supply for this wetland is on the upper portion. So that, as I call that, southeastern portion, or 1/3 or a little more than that of the wetland. I think in my report, what did I say? Yeah, so I said while the north central western portion of the site's wetlands, roughly 0.15 acres, has been disturbed in the past and contributes less to the overall quality of the function of the southern and eastern portions of the wetland. Roughly 0.26 are much less disturbed, provide higher function, and are almost devoid of invasive species. That is your seasonal hillside wetlands, discharge wetlands. Those are the ones that are contributing minerals to them. So that's been taken care of. As far as I can tell, the final plan will hopefully be able to give us full confidence, is that the mineralogy of the wetland, because of the fact that they're not putting anything up there, has been successfully been preserved. Now,
Right. I understand that those have been removed from the plans, as well as the roadway and the concerns there. My remaining concern is for the remainder of the proposed development, would the materials being introduced at the rest of the development over time have an impact on the wetlands?
Most likely not. These are inert materials. So the question is more what's happening during the construction phase until there's full stabilization. Once these final improvements are put in space into place, these are mostly inert materials. I can't imagine the concrete's going to leach anything out once it cures, and the rest of it is being handled. You know, the impervious surfaces are being handled by the stormwater management system. So the roadways are not going into the wetlands; they're going into their stormwater management system. So I think that should not be as much of a concern anymore once everything's stabilized.
Okay, so those aren't a concern, but you mentioned during construction. What would some of those concerns be? And I know, like, in recent experience, my neighbor had a roof down. My neighbor's 100 feet away, and a crew came in, and the next day I had remnants of asphalt shingles in my yard. I had tin snippings, cigarette butts, food wrappers, etc. And all that stuff, blew into my yard from 100 feet away. So I want to understand, what's the concern here while the construction is being, while that's occurring, what are the risks to the wetlands, and how do we mitigate those risks?
Well, your primary control obviously is erosion sedimentation controls, but obviously with that comes monitoring and maintenance. So if you're not monitoring, you're not maintaining, and you just go in and put them in and say, well, everything's in. No, I would say that you would have to have some kind of a schedule or some kind of a assurance that there's going to be proper monitoring and proper maintenance. Not only during construction, but let's say before COs, that a final inspection of the site is done, and any of these things are identified. If there's any material that are somehow passed by the erosion sedimentation controls or in the buffer or in the wetland, that obviously has to be taken care of. And yes, I've seen that, believe me. Mostly in commercial situations, not so much in residential, but this is, kind of a dense situation. So yeah, you need to have some kind of a monitoring and maintenance schedule. And I think the applicant has provided something, if I recall. You might want to ask him.
Let the engineer or the applicant respond.
For the record, Patrick Snow. In my past experiences, it's been outlined as Mr. Logan has said, we do an inspection prior to the start of a project or a construction, and after we do the same inspection and take pictures and walk through. If there is trash or items that blown in, would be removed or remediated in some way. Now, saying that, that's the worst case scenario. What we'd like to do is stop that from ever happening. And as Mr. Logan outlined, that usually comes from the construction management practices, being on site and making sure your dumpsters aren't overflowing, and the people who you do have doing work don't do exactly what you said, have lunch, throw it on the ground. Those are stuff that we do monitor, and we do take care of that. So I'm happy to do that pre and post inspection, but also during is something else we could work out every so long to come and inspect what has happened or has not happened.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then next item I have for you, Mr. Logan, is the wetland buffer zones. Your report here originally says that 90.3% of the woody upland review area would be taken. And I know that's going to change based on the modification to the site plan. So I would like to get a modified number. I would like to understand what the percentage of the wetland is going to be that's going to be impacted. And I'm seeing here that the buildings are going to, I see different numbers, like 6 to 7 feet, 2 to 50 feet. I'm not really sure, what it's a little confusing what I'm reading. But in the end, I think I read your recommendation, Mr. Logan, to say that the buffer width should be 50 to 80 feet. says a buffer width of 50 to 80 feet would be recommended. Is that your recommendation?
That was my initial recommendation, and that took into much into view of that portion of the wetland that was, in my mind, the most valuable, the higher functioning, and the one most likely to be impacted from the development. So now, I would say a lot of that has been taken care of. That doesn't mean that we're not going to take a closer look at the buffers that remain and maybe make additional recommendations. But again, I need to see the final plans.
Okay, so I can anticipate your report will be modified based on the modified site plans?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other commissioners, questions for Mr. Logan? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Logan.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. I then want to circle back to the engineer. Did have concern about a floodplain, and I would like to know what the footprint of that flooding is on this property in relationship to the proposed buildings.
Commissioner, so we're talking about the same thing. You don't mean floodplain, you just mean the seasonal area that gets
So,
water, correct? Because
right, so
floodplain,
I
when you say that to
understand
me,
that
I see 50, 100-year flood, just so I understand it.
Well, I understand that it's seasonally floods. There's concern about flooding at the roadway. The water this is wetland is a pass through. I understand that, but how high up does that water come? And does it go beyond the boundaries of this wetland?
Yes, I can explain that. So probably the best figure for you all to look at is the WTL sheet, which is just the wetlands. If we take a closer look at the contours within that area, am I not sharing that?
You are not sharing that yet.
No, all right. So looking at sheet WTL1, there's only a few. There's only a few areas that are low lying that actually should hold water for any period of time. So standing water, if that's the concern, is really limited to, based on the contours up from the survey, this area here, and there's a small area over here. But ultimately, all of these wetlands have a pitch, have a natural gradient to them that, ultimately the water drains out this end and forms sort of a shallow concentrated flow toward Kitts Lane. So there's not actually, based on this topography, a lot of area for the water to stay in place. It does tend to run down toward Kitts Lane. And so I'll flip over to the concept and you'll see that really that same contour is here and here. So these are our low areas, but once you cross up to about this elevation, you're going to start heading down gradient again. So I messed that one up. It's probably this way. And of course, the final grading plan will show the positive pitch away from these structures.
So would the low-lying area then be between those buildings right where your cursor is?
The center, so if you were going to consider it, maybe the flow path would be probably centered between these buildings. And that's something you can see more clearly in a previous grading plan. The next grading plan you see will look sort of something like this. So the flow path is this way, this way, this way, right? You have a sort of streamline this way.
Okay, so if I understand this, then that wetland floods, it's a pass through, and that water is going to flow between those buildings. So you have a row of buildings, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And then on the other side, 42, 41, 40, 39, 38, 37. The water is going to pass between those buildings to what, a drain?
There is a catch basin in this area, yeah, to intercept any flow that collects in these grassy areas. There's not usually a stream, by the way, the majority of the time flowing from this wetland. So this is really just in major rain events, melt events, things like that.
Okay, and your opinion is that catch basin is sized appropriately for those flooding situations?
It is, and you'll notice we used a double basin.
And those calculations are based on what? What data?
So our rainfall events are based on NOAA Atlas 14.
And that's
We-
current
Yes.
rainfall? What about future rainfall? Because I'm thinking towards the future, sustainability is a big thing these days. I gotta imagine this apartment complex will be here 100, 150 years. 100 years from now, what's the rainfall gonna be like? Is this adequate design for, 100, 150 years?
I can only speak to the current regulations, which say that I'm beholden to that 100-year storm, in some cases, from the NOAA Atlas 14.
Okay, but in recent history, I think August, we had 1,000-year storm.
We had
Steep
a-
slopes, we had houses, being destroyed out in Oxford. Very much potential for that happening here. You got a steep slope, you've got flash flooding, you got a property that has chronic seasonal flooding. I'm just kind of raising a flag here that this is a concern, in my opinion. You're building on a site that probably is not really suitable for this type of residence. But you guys are the engineers, and I'm hearing that you're building this according to today's regulations, but that's not taking into account. And I want to make sure the record is here, and I'm voicing my concern about the future and 1,000-year storms. What your calculations, if you'd be able to handle that in this situation?
Well, in the proposed condition, the area where the standing water typically accumulates is an elevation of 160, and Kitts Lane has an elevation of 148. So we're talking about 12 feet of differential between here. You'd have to flood all of Kitts Lane for water to actually stand between these buildings, and then
And
12 feet higher than
there's
that.
no obstructions, no barriers to that water flow from that wetlands out to Kitts Lane? Because it looks like, there's a
6
road
inch.
there, and I gotta imagine curbs and everything else.
So there's maybe
It's
6
all
inch curbs.
downhill out to Kitts Lane from there.
Yep, the roadway's all pitched toward Kitts Lane. We have basins to intercept that. We've got basins in the grass areas.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead, Commissioner Siddell.
so I'm getting a little confused. You talked about catch basin, and in the original report from George Logan, there were these detention structures, below ground detention structures, and originally there were 4, now there are 2. How do these things communicate with one another? I'm getting a little confused between how do these detention structures still exist, and how does that all work? I mean, communicate hydraulically.
So the reformatting of this site and the change in the unit configuration, you have not yet seen. Yeah, you have not yet seen the utility layout plan, like the actual arrangement of the pipes, but we relocated the detention structure from the south side of the driveway to the north side, and the pipes will be routed to carry the water there instead. They're low enough below the site that I can get the water to that location without any difficulty.
So that's how we just were talking about, that water that go through those 2 units where you have your red line. That's where that water is going to go through a catch basin down to that detention area.
Yeah, so I can show a now obsolete plan of the piping, just so you understand what I'm talking about. There's a catch basin here in the grass, for example. This is just one example. And previously it was piped to the catch basins across the street and down into this underground detention basin.
It's not showing.
And I don't know if I can make that. And from this underground detention basin down toward Kitts Lane. So you know, in a similar fashion, right, we can route the water in this configuration, right? We can use these underground infiltration structures. Imagine one here in the on the north side.
But these are all communicating, one flows through the other, right? It's it's inlet versus its outlet.
Most likely, yes. I mean, there's some engineering still to be done from the concept plan that was submitted earlier last week.
Okay.
All right. Anything further, Commissioner Siddell?
I'm good, thank you.
No. Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the new concept for units 19 to 21. You were just stating up there that the area where this is going to directly have the runoff to seems to be one of the more flood related areas. So if you did your little red circles, what are we doing to handle the runoff from that building right there?
The roof leaders on this project are piped into the stormwater detention system.
So it's not gonna be the same as, so if you look over here, that same unit configuration, 18 to 22, had the level spreader, seemed like it was going out to the wetlands.
Oh, are you asking for us to reintroduce those level spreaders?
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if, you know, it seems like with these level spreaders, it's kind of hard to look at these two maps because you don't have the wetland delineation on your utility plan here. So I can't tell, you know, the buffer between the end of that and where the wetland is. But I'm just wondering what we're doing for the runoff up here. I mean, obviously I prefer it, get it out to the road and down instead of going into the wetlands.
I would point out that roof runoff is considered unpolluted water, and it could actually be discharged anywhere on the site.
But I think the question
But
is
it's gonna be an
which way is
increased
the water?
discharge rate going into a flood prone area.
What we're calling a flood here, I would point out, is really just standing water. It's a small depth in a limited area, and any overflow is going to head to the west, not up gradient toward the buildings.
So clarify for me, buildings 19, 20, 21, what direction is the water flowing? North, east, south, west?
It's gonna go
To the west.
West,
It's going to flow to the west.
right
Okay.
to where he had one of those little red circles where he was talking about the flood.
So,
No,
so it's
question you
right.
had.
The flow-
So it's
the
flooding-
flow
so it's
directions-
flooding towards the wetland.
Yep.
So it's contributing to the flooding.
If I could,
Go ahead, Commissioner Bashant.
Yeah, from my site visit, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't see anything with the topography there that would hold more than a foot of water.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
So we're talking about flooding, but you said like this, but I would think it'd be a foot or two, yeah,
Yeah, but it's
the most, so.
Well, Mr. Logan's testimony on the 17th said he saw high water marks on the trees, 8 to 10 inches high.
Well, that's probably about the high mark, you know.
Would it help the
I agree with
commission if Mr. Ville's company was to locate the height of that high water mark
Yeah,
and show
I
that?
would like to see that, you know, if there is a potential floodplain that we could map. You know, if there's a 10-inch rise.
I think that would
you know,
answer the
extrapolate
question.
Outwards, or, you know,
Right.
does that meet the wetlands boundaries or does it extend beyond the boundaries?
So Dan, if you were to measure that high water mark and determine what that elevation is, I think that will clarify it for the commission.
okay. Yeah, we can, I'd need a photo or something from George.
I think either George could provide a photo or meet you on site.
We can get those elevations.
That'd be fine. As a matter of fact, probably be good for me to see what I didn't see before, and that's what's happening in the Stop and Shop portion. Because I was not focusing on that.
All right, Commissioner Bashant has a question.
If Commissioner Seidel is finished.
He is, I believe so. Commissioner Seidel, you're finished?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Bashant?
So this is gonna be a little bit of a bombshell, but, I was thrilled when I saw that roadway removed. I was never gonna vote for building on that steep slope, but I thought you needed the roadway. So when I saw that you were able to get those hammerheads in there, I was really excited. I'm still looking at 19, 20, and 21, and I'm hoping, can you possibly squeeze them in somewhere further east? And we could eliminate a lot of roadway. We could take this construction right out of this other upland regulated area, which Mr. Snow wasn't here for that discussion, but there's another wetland or upland review area there that a good portion of that hammerhead to the north is in, or if we're gonna call that a hammerhead or whatever we're calling that turnaround. I would love to see this, if we could pull this back east as far as possible. And then most of this development would be down gradient of the wetland. And so all these other discussions would be, except, you know, well, not all of them, but much of the other, rest of the concerns would be.
I think you mean west. I think you mean west.
Move it west. What did I say? East?
East.
Sorry.
East is up the hill.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
But, sorry.
Commissioner Bishop, we'll be happy to take a look at it as, you know, this has been a fairly fluid plan and working with the town's professionals. I think we've looked at trying to do that, but again, we could look one more time, and I hear your concern about taking those 3 out. As far as moving that hammerhead back, I mean, that obviously if those units aren't there, that becomes more of a possibility than where we are right now.
Yeah, you'd call it that little Texas looking appendage there. I would love to see it come even west of that if possible, but
I guess I would.
again, I was thrilled when I saw what you were able to accomplish so far. And then because you still do have upgrading influence of from those units on the wetland.
Okay, understood.
That's it for now. Oh, what? Let me see. Anything else? Well, so back to that buffer loss, that would also eliminate much of that too. You'd be gaining a lot of the buffer back. The chairman raised the issue of the buffer loss. So, and then maybe regarding the flooding traveling through those rows of buildings, I'm sure you're not gonna have walkout basements there. So the
Correct.
foundations will be high in the back, at least on this south side, they're gonna be high because the road is higher.
Yep.
So, you know, if the outside chance water came up to them, we're still talking about not, talking about concrete construction. Oh, and also on the plan that you're showing, you're still showing numbers 40 and 41. I don't know if that's just did I see that correctly? Did I?
Only to demonstrate the utilities, that's not part of the current.
The updated
arrangement.
plan.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
Okay. Is Mr. Logan still online?
George, you still there? Yes.
Okay.
I'm still here.
All right, so Mr. Logan, I believe it was at the September 17th meeting, Commissioner Paskowitz had raised a concern regarding the vegetative canopy and the removal of trees that are providing shade in the area of the wetlands. Did you address that in your report?
The report basically addressed what was on the plans at that time, and that obviously was a concern. But the majority of that concern, if not all of it, that's germane to protection of the most valuable portion of the wetland has been addressed by elimination of those units and the loop road. That doesn't mean that we can't take a closer look once the grading is put into place to see if there's any mitigation that we can have. Now, this wetland is not specifically, especially the lower portion, is not specifically sensitive to to shading, if you will, or in reverse to open light, because most of it is sort of open, and that, so we say north and northwestern, say 1/4 or so. The rest of it obviously is canopied. But if this was a particular habitat that had sensitivity as far as thermal impacts, like if this was a vernal pool, or if this was a specific wetland that had vegetation that then would suffer because now you're opening the canopy and that could introduce more rank vegetation, even though it's native, to take over. I don't see that. And if there was any case where that could have happened, it would have been for those slope wetlands that they now have eliminated those impacts.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Now, if this wetland was left undisturbed over time, would that lower section, would the value of it improve? Would it increase and potentially be the same value as the wetland that you think has, or the portion of the wetland that you think has a higher value? Over time, would this wetland evolve and have a higher value in that low value area that you've pointed out?
Well, it's always a possibility, but the probability in my mind is that you have stressors there from the invasive species, and that's going to usually it goes in reverse, especially now that the climate is changing a little bit. So it's impacting certain species and allowing other things to come in that are not favorable to the wetland. One thing that I forgot to mention, so interesting, and this is more of a curiosity than anything else, but in the center of this wetland, we found a particular shrub to small tree species that apparently doesn't exist anywhere else in Connecticut.
Another one of those. Oh, boy.
Okay.
It's not listed. It's out of range, completely out of range. We have no idea how it got there. It's related to, it's a mountain spirea, a clethra. Clethra meaning, your sweet pepper bush. This is the mountain ones that you find down in the south. I don't think it's an issue, but it's kind of a little curiosity. So I'm kind of glad that we did what we did as far as taking those units out in the row, because I think it's slightly on the slope, so it's going to preserve the hydrology for whatever reason. That seemed to do nicely there, so it will continue to do nicely there. So that's just a little slight curiosity. But to answer your question, I can't really tell you whether this is going to improve or not. I think usually it's the reverse because of invasive species that are already there.
All right. So your recommendation is to try to preserve that special shrub?
Well, it's going to be preserved now because they've eliminated they've addressed the hydrology issue. So if there was any concern with that species, it would have been hydrology. So that's been maintained.
Right.
I was just gonna say that I wonder if it was just a house plant or a yard planting or something that got dumped there or something. But I was gonna say we have our own swamp cottonwood.
Yeah. No, that's not a swamp cottonwood, certainly, but it's a complete out of range. It's way north from where it likes to be. So
Is it typically a landscaping item or a house
no,
plant item?
not up here. Maybe down south, but not up here.
Is it something the Carolina wren might have brought to us?
Who knows? Well, we even went and talked to Bill Moorhead, who's the state botanist, and he was kind of curious about that, but he didn't have any concerns. Just said basically, if you can preserve it, that's great. Like, okay, we are.
Chairman Zellick, Commissioner Paskowitz here.
Go ahead, Commissioner Paskowitz.
Relating to plants that are not typical in an area or indigenous, I've been reading reports from climate change, not specific to the condition of the atmosphere where it is, but hurricanes and the atmospheric areas where they're moving have been moving plants from different areas, including from the south north. So species of trees and vegetation are changing here in the north. And we're seeing a reverse role as well. From my studies at Yale, there's a lot going on in not just the climate, but the species are moving about from hurricane movement.
That is very true. Yeah, we're seeing, and unfortunately, most of the species we're seeing are not the ones we want, but some are. So this particular one is called Clethra acuminata, just for your interest. Common name is mountain pepperbush.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments from commissioners? If
Yes.
not, oh, we do. Okay, Commissioner Romet.
Just each one of these housing units has one garage under it or two? What, one, like space for one car
Mix
or
of
two?
one and twos.
Hmm?
It's a mix. So the end units that show an extra garage have a second bay. There's only a handful of those. So unit 19 has 2 garage bays. Unit 13 has 2 garage bays. 23 has 2 garage bays, and 32 and unit 2. The rest are singles.
Okay, so let's say we get 6 inches of snow, where is it gonna go? When we have
Snow
to clear
storage
all
was-
this off, where do we put it?
Yeah, snow storage, I'm pretty sure was shown in one of the previous site plan sets, maybe on the landscape plan.
Would you just push
Yeah,
it all the way edge?
snow storage areas are shown in the landscape plan in the previous submission. So this will be updated to include, this will be updated for the current concept when we resubmit it, but the darker areas here are all intended for snow storage, beyond a couple inches.
So snow and salt and stuff is gonna be pushed right up against the wetland, according to that map.
No, snow storage tends to come off the,
I mean, we all have to shovel out our driveway and that has to go into the road. And then once it's in the road, there's gonna be somebody comes along and pushes it to the end of the hammerhead or something.
Right, well, right, but it's gonna drain away from the wetlands, not towards it, and I guess in this, just that one area potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, there's-
So we could adjust that.
Based on my prior concern about the flooding and the flow of the water going between those 2 rows of apartments, you're stacking snow there. Wouldn't that basically create a dam? You could have snow one day and then, it freezes solid and then a week later you have a flash flood event. Wouldn't you be causing a potential flood by placing the snow in that area? I'll take that as a yes.
We could say potentially, and then we could
Potentially.
relook at that, yes. But
surely I don't
to your-
need to store it here.
Right, to your point on the global warming as well, but we could.
I'll raise that as concern.
I'm just thinking that no contractor is gonna, precisely place it here and there. They're gonna put it to the end of the driveway.
Mhm.
They're
Right.
not gonna, like stack little pieces of snow here.
Well, I mean, just keep in mind also, this is gonna be one snow contractor. This isn't like a house. This isn't this isn't homes that people are purchasing. So it's one contractor. You're not gonna have a homeowner shovel his driveway, leave it at the end. This is one plow contractor coming in doing the whole job if there is a snow event. So there's more control than what you're describing, Commissioner Lemon.
If they're still just gonna push the. end of the
Agree, yes, and they're not gonna, but my point, they're not gonna,
do anything
they're not
fancy.
gonna stop and leave it there, but we have better control of where that does go. Is what the point I was trying to make.
So the snow storage area is along Kip's Lane. How do you get the snow there? You going between the buildings, you going out to the street and then coming in and dumping it?
Typically, we prepare these snow storage figures for unusual events when we would be bringing in front end loaders or other equipment to actually move snow as opposed to just plowing it to the roadside, right? So this is for large events that require us to pick up and move snow because we can't pile it up in the shoulder. So to answer your question, yes.
But I mean, really, I would think you don't really have a shoulder because you basically,
There is no
you've
shoulder.
developed the whole area, so you've got to clear, you got to put the snow somewhere. You can't just push it to the side of the road because the side of the road is where people are living. Commissioner Bashan?
Yeah, I agree with you. You're gonna be using a front end loader on any snowstorm, basically over 3 inches. And so to George's point about those pinch points, I would almost, if we're concerned about the chemicals they use on the roads now, at least in that end of that southern hammerhead where it's like 2 feet from the wetland and the wetland is still down gradient at that. I don't know how you do it, but there may have to be some ban on dumping snow over that embankment because to Mr. Lemon's point, that's the first place it's gonna go. I mean, it's where, if you're plowing or pushing or even with a loader. So you're gonna have to like pull all, it's gonna be a challenge to pull all that snow out of there because you don't have storage along the entire roadway, essentially. How wide is the roadway?
I think it's about 8 feet.
More than that.
Did you
I
say
think it's
8 feet?
22.
Hmm?
I think it's
Right?
How wide is, how wide is the roadway?
22.
22 feet.
You have a little bit of storage there, but anything, like I said, 4 or 6 inches or something, you're gonna need a loader.
That dimensions at Miser.
Commissioner,
It's
20
feet.
Commissioner, I have to jump on this immediately because it's going to be, an issue that needs to be addressed right away. And my feelings are when snow develops of a substantial amount on a roadway, people, contractors bring in a payloader, a bucket loader with dump trucks. They put it in the truck and they haul it away. That's how this is addressed. You don't have to worry about storage on site because it's addressed in that manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Paskowitz.
I've seen that
I would have
in-
liked to have heard that from the applicant.
Yeah, I've seen that in dense
Thank you.
cities, but not in typical.
They don't do that.
developments.
That's not happening.
Those guys are tired.
Okay.
Like I
so-
said, well, if I just might continue, those couple of pinch points or those really close areas where if you dump it right over off the road there, it's just gonna melt right immediately into the
Don't
wetland.
dump it off the road. They take it away. I've been on building development construction
Well,
for
just so,
30 years.
we'll just say theoretically, if someone thought of doing that.
Theoretically, this is the real world.
Yeah, okay, so Commissioner Paskowitz, we understand, but I haven't heard the applicant say that that is what's going to happen.
But what I was saying is if there was some way to really, foolproof, make sure that that doesn't happen.
Right, or if
At
that,
least in those couple of small areas that are so influential to the wetland.
I'll address Attorney Lux's direct question.
But
Go
ahead,
Sean,
Commissioner
stop making
Paskowitz.
assumptions.
Sorry.
All right, anything else, Commissioner Paskowitz?
No, let's hear from the contractor, please.
Okay, they're gonna take that under consideration.
Yes, correct. We'll take that, we'll come up with a plan. We'll either readdress some of those areas or discuss how to
Yeah.
best handle that.
We had one other loose end. Are we all done? Because I
Yes.
wanted to get back to the point about the extension. We were gonna ask the applicant, and I know they volunteered.
Pat, you weren't here when we brought this up,
Well, we had brought it up in our meeting and.
but it was verbal. I
Right,
need you to
we
tell the
need to-
commission.
Oh, sure.
Right here, right now.
Right here. This is it. Now, this is the big moment.
Thank you.
Is there dates or just additional 30 days you want me to say?
We can only do one more extension for the public hearing, and then statutorily, we have to close the public hearing, and that means we can put this off to January 21st, our next regular meeting.
So do you want me to, I agree to extend this
Correct.
application or until January 21st,
Correct.
2025.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And then just as a point of order for everybody, you do not have to vote on the application at that meeting. You can get one, you can vote in February.
Take our time to deliberate, if needed. All right, so the applicant will make revisions to the site plan and address the concerns of the commission. I would like to invite the public to speak. Give them an opportunity. This is a public hearing, so if there are any members of the public present this evening, they will come forward. And if you do come forward, please state your name and address clearly for the record. After public comment, we will allow the applicant to rebuttal if needed.
Hi, Stacy Dennis. I've got several concerns. See the new design where the roadway doesn't completely block in the wetlands. However, they're still 3/4 of the way.
You just state
Sorry.
your address.
Oh, address 252 Kits Lane, Newington. So concerns. Roadway doesn't go all the way around the wetlands anymore. However, they're still 3/4 of the way blocked in. I know Mr. Logan wants only a 50-foot buffer zone, which is smaller than this room. Where's the salt runoff gonna go? You're gonna destroy these wetlands. So you've got them 3/4 of the way blocked. You've got these hammerhead parking turnarounds. Do you have sewers there? for the water runoff? What about chemicals used to mow lawns? Where's all that gonna go? 50 feet, Mr. Logan? So just public concern, great. Roadway doesn't go all the way in and block it around. The small 100-foot pipe is gone, but you still got them 3/4 of the way blocked in. And as far as, oh, there's different types of wetlands, that's soil gradation, right? So, I don't know what you're trying to do there, but you really still have them blocked in and you're gonna destroy them. So, yeah, the water flow might be coming down the hill, but then you're blocking it. All of the commissioners that have been speaking up about the blocking of the flow of water are completely correct. Where are your storm drains? So you're just gonna destroy the wetlands. Salt, even if you get some full contractor that's willing to haul snow away from a condo complex, what about salting? Where's all that runoff going with only 50 feet? So even if the water's flowing this way when it's frozen, it's just gonna go all in the wetlands. So as far as I'm concerned, public opinion, from my perspective, you haven't done anything to protect the wetlands by cutting the roadway in half. Thank you for letting me express my opinion and concerns.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wishing to speak? If you could just state your name and your address for the record, please.
Mark Switows, 252 Kitts Lane. I have concerns about the snow storage, and as the engineer showed, where the parking spaces are on the north side, he has arrows going, drifting down into the wetlands. Salt, calcium chloride, magic salt, the green salt, all will neutralize that wetlands over time. When calcium dries, it turns into a powder and is airborne. So that's a concern for long-term future of that wetlands. The sustainability of it, it'll kill it. It'll be a Dead Sea. So that's all I have.
Okay. With those comments, Mr. Logan, if you would take those into consideration when you're reviewing your report and address those concerns, please.
Yes, I'm taking notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any rebuttals or further comments from the applicant?
No direct rebuttals that the plan won't show from what they discussed. But I would like to do, if we could just review, part because I wasn't here, part because there's a lot of items that we could list out what you want to address. I think I have most of them. I'm happy to start and just make sure I don't miss anything. If that's something to commission would entertain.
And there were quite a few, Chris.
There were quite a few, and I wasn't taking notes. My apologies. I think, Pat, we can have a quick teleconference with George, who was taking notes,
Okay,
sometime this week, so you can get on top of those.
right. All right. Do you want me to just get what I have?
Yeah, he has some
Record?
himself.
Right. So I mean, I had the erosion control plan with the silt sock. I had the seasonal flooding area, the snow shelf as we just discussed, a grading for the flood area to see where it was on one side or the other, or the height of it to show on the plan. Let's see,
Site grading plan.
site grading plan, the potential, and then the storm drainage locations, which we do show. So those were what my notes had. Was there anything else?
I think George brought up invasive mitigation. Was there?
Oh, I think that was addressed with the landscaping plan that we've received but haven't gotten to you yet.
Okay.
So if you want to adjust any of that between now and then, including
Okay.
your plan set.
And I was just gonna say, my bombshell concern, we can't order you or direct you on that. That was just something that I.
But to see if we could relocate that hammerhead,
I
AKA
think that would
Barcelona.
eliminate a lot of the upland, gradient influence into this wetland
Understood.
and restore a lot of buffer too. And there was also an issue you weren't here for, that there's another upland review regulated area that's coming from the north. It's for a water body on the north that intersects the existing upland review area, but also encumbers your entire turnaround up there, that to the north side.
Yeah, so.
It's shown on your wetland plan, and it wasn't shown on this current site plan. So I think George wants to go back out there and revisit that, as well as point out to Dan's surveyor what that high water mark on the trees is, so we can document that.
Got it. Okay.
And, and to piggyback on Commissioner Deschamps' comments, even the elimination of numbers 19, 20, and 21, I think that would help preserve that part of the wetland that Mr. Logan seems to have a high appreciation for.
Understood. Anything else? Great. Thank you very much. And try to turn that around as quick as we can. With the holidays.
Thank you.
Can you call George tomorrow and set up that meeting so you guys can get on top of that? Because I know we're running into the holiday week next week.
Yeah.
You're-
Send out an email with it.
Yeah.
All right, very good. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public participation on non-agenda items. Any member of the public wishing to speak on non-agenda items? So if it's related to the application that we just heard, we cannot take any comments. Just looking for other comments in general from the public.
Just a quick comment, Gail Draco, 21 Isabel Terrace. First of all, I want to say welcome back, Jeff. The commission missed you. And I just want to congratulate the officers. I think this is a very strong slate. Along with the new commissioners, I do believe I'm very pleased with what I've seen and heard. So just congratulations.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? Right, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. We have no new business. Next item is old business, which is 226 Kits Lane. The applicant has left. We've tabled this. They will come back in January with the revised plan. So you have a comment? Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, on that on the business that we're talking about, it still calls it and I don't know if this means anything, but it's still calling it a 44 unit, which it's already been reduced. So I don't know if the language needs to be changed or if that stays the same.
It stays the same because that's what the application
Original.
is for.
Right.
So when we get the final plans, should you approve, deny, or whatever, it will still say that, but the final plans will show what was approved, denied, or whatnot. And it's only because if you start changing application names mid-application,
And the notifications have
the
to.
notifications are invalid, the confusion factor is very high, et cetera. So we just leave it the way it is until we're done. Now, should you deny or should he decide to pull his application back because his plans aren't complete enough at the next meeting, then he would reapply and we would address the addressing issue at that point. Because in addition to the number of units, the actual name of the property owner has changed. Because since he applied for this application, he's actually purchased the property. And so the ownership and all that sort of thing would have to be updated. It's just a matter of the legal aspects
He
of
didn't own
all
it
of this.
before?
Beg your pardon?
He did not own this property before?
No, he applied under the previous owner. They were the signatures as the property owner, and then in that process, because as I understand it, there was some reluctance on the part of the private property owner to sign the application. Mr. Snow actually purchased the properties and then submitted his application, signed at that point, but the application had already been created under the name of the 4 units. It's now all under one LLC. It's just a matter of the land ownership being separate from the application.
Oh, all right. Anything further on that application? Thanks. Moving on, public participation on non-agenda items again. Seeing none, anybody online?
We do have a member of the public as an attendee. I don't know if Mr. McCarthy would like to speak or not. He's muted at the moment. I'm going to ask him if he wants to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Bill.
Hi. No, I've just been following along and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing and happy holidays. Thanks.
Thank you. Just for the record, could you state your name and address?
Bill McCarthy, 206 Churchill Drive.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, communications report, agent communications.
Okay, I don't have a lot for you tonight. I want to bring to your attention that there is an issue on Shepherd Drive, Shepherd Steel property, where they cleared a parcel of theirs, and portion of it is in the upland review area from the small water course that flows between their two separate parcels there. So I have an ongoing communication with the owner of Shepherd Steel. Shepherd Drive is a small dead-end street at the north end of town by the West Hartford line.
Property runs along the railroad tracks.
Yes, and then he owns a separate parcel on the other side of that water course. And that water course has an upland review area, and so he wasn't aware of the rules, and so we're discussing how he wants to go forward with coming to the
What
commission.
type of activity?
They cleared the lot, meaning most of it was scrub brush, but there were some trees and things. The extent of the invasion into the upland review area is not yet determined. In other words, it looks to the eye like they cleared more than they should have. So he's gonna have to get a plan together and, make an application of a level higher than an agent approval.
So does it involve excavation?
Not as of yet.
So right now it's just vegetation?
Last time I was at the site, yes. So not into the stumping stage yet, or, grading or anything like that.
Curious, how did the incident come to your attention?
The usual way, somebody called. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know that street existed, to be honest with you.
Spring Street or Shepherd?
Shepherd.
Oh,
Spring Street's another one of those. If I hadn't had a reason to go there, I would have never found it my own.
Are you talking about close to that border of that property on Spring Street, correct? On the south end of that Shepherd's property?
Yes. Yep.
I know the area.
Okay. Another item that's on the radar but isn't ready to be addressed by the commission yet is there's I'm not sure how familiar you are with 8th Street, but 8th Street has a number of duplexes. And sometimes the people who own the duplexes want to subdivide the property so that they can sell the other half to somebody else. We have a potential for one of these where the one that is being subdivided is in the upward review area. So that's just, so this may come your way. And then the last item I've got for you before the holidays, if I can make this work, is.
So the one that is a subdivision, is there any activity in the upland review?
No, it's just to create the parcel.
Right,
They'll
so-
draw a line down the common wall.
Right, so we could probably do that as agent approval. If the commission's okay with that, I don't see any need to review it if there's no
If they're not
activity.
the activity.
At this point, I think that would be suitable, but I haven't seen plans yet. I mean, if they do come in with, we're gonna build a garage, now that's another matter. But they have had a discussion with us preliminarily, so I wanted to make that known to you. And then, let's see.
Didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could take a duplex, just say, I'm chopping it in half.
A lot of them are done like that.
Really?
They're not physically chopped.
Well, I mean, but but the land, you get half the land, that kind of thing. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, quite a few of them are done like that because they're worth more like that.
Not to me.
Well, you're selling 2 units instead of one building. Well,
So what I would like to do, if I can make this work, is to show you a little video of the Mill Pond Bridge crane swing. Because that was a big item of discussion here. Bear with me while I try to figure out where I put it.
Sky. The snow on this.
I guess so, yeah. Is this where we're gonna snow?
That's what they're, pile of snow here,
Well, actually here.
pile it here.
Between these buildings and the snow is supposed to go there. How can you get to that?
Hey, Jeff.
Well, it's kind of a
In the
mess.
meantime, could you introduce me to the new members? Because I don't think I met them. Were you here before?
Yep, so we have.
We're not, right?
No, this is my first. Yeah.
Ostrinsky,
Greg
Ostrinsky.
is over here, yeah.
okay, and Keith Anderson.
Keith, and what's your first name?
Greg,
Greg. I'm John. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Nice to meet all of you. Meet all of you.
I've heard good things about both you guys.
Hopefully it's true.
We'll find
Look, a good story.
You're supposed to say, I don't care what they say.
No, I'm just sort of wondering, you know, like, why do?
I'm gonna be really disappointed if I can't find this.
Of all the dry land around here, this is about it. So why didn't they put anything
You
here?
gotta send it to us if you can't find it.
I can, but that's not nearly as much fun, is it?
Because this is your stop and shop is right here, right?
Mhm.
So this is
So
dry.
is all that buffer really needed for the crane swing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just curious.
I would never lie to you.
That's where the existing house is.
Not
No, the
intentional.
existing.
Not
house is
intentionally.
here.
This is pretty steep though. I mean,
That's a retention basin, right?
it looks like it almost.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because you can see there's.
Oh, is that it?
there's
Okay.
Inflow right there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what I don't know. Yeah, okay. What's all right? I'm gonna take the snow.
Yeah, I
Here.
think he owns up to like here. This is probably the retention for the
Or stop and shop.
stop and shop.
Yeah, my guess is with how the grading is, they wouldn't be able to change the grading if it wasn't their property. So if the property line is right at the grading.
Oh, okay, all right. That makes more sense then. And that means that these guys here, can just step out of their back window, their back door.
They're gonna be.
So apparently
They're
the
gonna go right-
software on my
right off.
laptop is not up to date
They're gonna
enough
have
to
a
warrant
big
it.
bus, let me.
Hmm?
All right, gentlemen, the software on my laptop isn't gonna let me run this the way I'd like to.
Yeah, wow. Jeff,
You know how
The
kids are,
software
they
on my
probably like
laptop
that.
is not gonna let me run this video, so I'm gonna have to save that for another day.
Okay, yeah, we'll catch you at the next meeting.
Yep.
All right, anything else?
Where's the bridge anyway?
what about?
Where's the bridge?
Yeah, I mean, where is it right now? Where is it physically?
The video?
The new one?
Yeah, the new one's in place.
Yeah, they
Oh,
swung
you
it in
already
place.
did it?
Yeah, that's what the video was.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Dave. The bridge was placed last week. And they're going to do the final, I'm sorry, there is something I should mention to you. It almost slipped my mind. When we originally applied for the application for the bridge, I told you there was no in-water work. And then after the old bridge came off, we decided, myself, the structural engineer, to pour a concrete collar around the existing foundation. There was a void area in the way the mill pond falls rock itself is shaped. So to protect the old foundation and to provide a little more stability should the foundation not be as strong as we hope it is. And all indications are it's okay, but it's now gonna have to support that bridge for another 70 or more years. So we poured a concrete collar around the base of that foundation, 6 inches of which extends into the area that was previously encumbered by a structure, and we did this on both sides. So it was drilled into the bedrock and epoxied into place, the rebar, and then the concrete was formed around that as well as into the abutments that are there. So this structure should be there long after we're all gone. So that's my hope, but
Speak for
I did
yourself.
tell you at the time that if we did any work on that abutment, I would bring it to your attention.
With the drought, you didn't have to deal with any water at least.
We, when they were ready to pour the concrete was when we started getting rain again. So that's why they're not quite done yet. They're doing the last concrete pour tomorrow and they're doing the final asphalt to the bridge itself. They had to remove some of the sidewalks back a little bit to accommodate the work. That's all being finished tomorrow. So the form work should come off next week. So we'll have the bridge done for Christmas, I hope.
Where are they pouring concrete? Because I looked at it, I didn't see any forms or anything.
They're under, they're the outside 3 exposed faces of both abutments, so underneath and to the sides.
I saw that all fully encased in new concrete.
They must have to do one last piece because they did communicate with me today that they were doing all that tomorrow. You know, as well as the asphalt work, which I was getting anxious about because there's only 2 plants left in Connecticut that are open. So they're right on that cusp of getting me pissed off, pardon my French. So, but that's it for agent communications. So that brings up council liaison.
Council liaison communications. For our new members, this is when town council members come forward and give us updates on what's happening around town, any concerns that they might have for the wetlands, and vice versa. If we have any concerns for them, we get to express it, and it goes directly to the town council.
Cool.
Good evening. We've got a brief presentation, not even a presentation, but only a couple of items. The last meeting on December 10th. I'll start. You can do I'll do this one. We can, why not? We'll share it. We had a presentation by member of Preservation CT and also from State Historic Preservation Office. It was very detailed, very comprehensive, talking not only about the work that is done at these 2 agencies, but also how that might relate to some of our properties here in Newington that we are concerned about and are very interested in terms of preserving our history and some of the buildings and the sites that we know are here, and we've already lost some over the years. So that moving forward, you're probably going to be hearing more and more about that. We have a working group that both Councilor Budrago and I are members of. It is not council related. It's a kind of a group of residents who have come together and are very interested in preserving what we have here in town and what the state might be able to provide in terms of education, financial assistance. We do have areas and buildings that are currently on the state and I think the federal registry, and there may be more to be added to that as well. So we also heard what the value and the benefits of becoming a registered site, what that might entail, and at some point in the future, we definitely want to have a couple of informational sessions so that members of the community can get an understanding of what we have of value in this town historically, and who may or may not be living or owning some of these sites, and how they may be able to get some assistance as we move forward. And if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
One thing of interest is that we found out that there was a historical inventory of properties done in Newington in 1979, which is obviously outdated. Some may have, unfortunately fallen off. There may be others to be added, but we also found that there's grants available and there's money available to get somebody so that we could apply for a grant to get a new historical inventory done. So it was a unanimous agreement of the council to ask the town to move forward with applying for a grant so we can get an updated listing of the historical properties in town. So that was kind of exciting.
And then the only other that we wanted to bring to your attention is resolution regarding the fire department building committee. And if you wanted to speak to that, I know we've got some information here as well.
Well, initially, the fire department came to us with a list with all their properties listed with 7 different facilities and for a building committee. And after discussion at the council and the give and take between the fire commissioners and the town manager, we asked them to go back because really 7 properties on one building committee is just a little overwhelming, and we asked them to kind of prioritize their needs. So they did come back to us with a new resolution, which was again the council was in agreement with. they need to focus on company 4. And I know, Councilor Rada, or Deputy Mayor Rada, who's more, she's the liaison with the fire department. You can have us, talk more, give more information on that. But in addition to company number 4, certainly because of the size and the fact that new fire engines are certainly not going to be able to fit into company 4, which is very small. But they also are interested in acquiring property right next to company 3, which is on West Hill, for not for immediate use, but for future expansion, because the property is for sale. So that was discussed as well as the on whether and how to go forward with that.
Yeah, I think the initial resolution, which listed all of the properties, was comprehensive. And even though there was a second iteration that we looked at the last council meeting, and I think there are still a couple of tweaks that are going to be done to that resolution. For folks who are not as familiar with the fire department as some of us are, to see the listing of all of the companies and all of the buildings, including the 2 historic sites, Old Company 1, which essentially serves as a fire museum up on the corner of Garfield and Main Street, and then Old Company 3, which is on West Hill. Well, it's on Chapman Street, corner of Chapman and West Hill Road, and how the fire department and the community might want to come together and see if that can be preserved. Because at the moment, there's a tree growing up through the middle of one of the bays. It needs significant construction and probably abatement. But Company 4 is over near, I think it's on 5th Street. It's very small, and with the new fire apparatus that is purchased, year after year in succession, they're getting much larger, and the apparatus requires more space. There is an engine, I want to say it's coming in this coming year or next, or the following year, and it's not going to be able to fit into the bay at Company 4. So that really is taking priority as to what can be done. There's nothing specific yet. Years ago, there was a lot adjacent to Company 4, but that was since purchased, and there is a house there, so that's not available. There's very little space, any of you that know that area. So possibly building up might be the only opportunity, so that there could be 2 bays on the first floor, where now there's just one. It's only a 1-story building. 2 bays that could accommodate current and future apparatus, and then having other space on the second floor for meeting space, office space, that sort of thing. So it's interesting. It will move forward. I think both the council and the fire department is pleased with the way things are progressing, and we'll just keep you all informed as we move forward. And happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Just a quick one, the historical thing where you get the grant, who does the work? Do you hire consultants to determine what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We would get the grant, but then, the state has a listing of consultants that do this type of work. But it was exciting to hear that there is money available, and they kind of encouraged us to apply for it. And again, 1979, that is quite. But another thing that was interesting is that in identifying properties, the common definition is things 50 years old or more.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's mostly.
That's my house.
So it's gonna be, part of the work of this consultant would be working with town and interviewing people to see really, let's be a little bit more realistic in terms of the town of Newington, in terms of, there will be other criteria, not just based on age.
Do want to say that Eric Hinckley has been doing a great job. I think this is part of his deep interest is history, but trying to pull together as much information and as much documentation as is available up to this point, as these properties were being either put on the registry or documented. You can only go back so far, and you know, this would certainly be a huge gift and a huge of huge value to the town to be able to bring in a consultant who could actually work and get that done, and we could have a real, as extensive as possible and as detailed a list of the properties here in the community.
Have either of you ladies met Mrs. Baxter? I mean, she's since passed. Did either of you know her? She did a lot of that inventory. She even wrote a book on Newington. You never met her?
That may be
A lot
one
of
of the people that helped to
Start-
initiate some of this listing that was done.
She lived on Main Street near where I lived for a while, and she used to walk by every day.
Really?
You would have loved her. She was really interested in that.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Okay, one last item is pond life research and education. Mr. Paskowitz, any updates for us?
Yes, Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you.
You missed the meetings, I believe, regarding my interest in my observation at Mill Pond and the algae bloom that has been identified.
I missed the meeting, but I did watch all of them. I am up to date.
Okay, so if we could move forward and get your guidance on how to address this.
Well, you caught me off guard. I'm not an expert. I really don't know how you go about addressing it. Something like this, we would normally turn over to town staff, since it falls under the authority of Parks and Rec.
I had brought this to the attention of Chris, our wetland agent. I had asked him to look into this and, you know, research how we're gonna mitigate this problem.
All right, so I guess maybe, I don't know, Chris, is there a response,
I haven't done anything with it since we chatted. We went for a nice walk around the pond at that time and just discussed it in general terms, but I had been fairly busy, so it wasn't a high priority with getting the bridge built and hiring my office is now fully staffed, by the way. So I've got my field crew now, finally. First time since probably Chris Greenlaw, we've had 3 people in engineering.
So what's the update on staffing?
So I have an assistant town engineer and an engineering technologist now. So the 2 of them are both my survey crew and my office engineers. So this means I'm a little more free to do some of these other things.
Sounds like an assignment for your survey.
It could be.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got them working on the Parks Garage facility for the feasibility study for facilities. We had to, I did not want to do the survey myself for the highway garage because there are wetlands on that property and they will have to be flagged and brought before this commission for any future work, such as a map amendment or whatnot. And it just looked to me like it was a safer thing to have a consultant do that survey and do that wetland work than to coordinate that in-house with my being your agent. Since I would be the one sealing the survey and the site plans, it was problematic for me.
Right, avoid a conflict of interest.
Right, whereas the Parks Garage doesn't have wetlands on it in the area where they want to do work, so it also gave us the opportunity to clean up some of the questions about the land boundary lines at that property. For instance, the Eddy House is shown on our GIS as being a separate parcel. It's my opinion at the moment from the research we've done, it's not. It's all one large property. So this is something that has to do with the way we do addressing in town. There's a standard for that, how it works with the 911 system, a number of other things that aren't related to this commission, but all play together that just make this a question we had to answer. And the easiest way for us to answer it, I thought, was for us to do the survey and all the associated research with that, to say, yes, we now know where the boundaries are, and we now know the answers to all those questions, and that's something we can do inside. So we took that on ourselves.
All right,
And that means in regard to pond life, I can perhaps look into the algae issue. There must be a history of it if it's an ongoing thing.
so Commissioner Basham.
Isn't that what the fountain is supposed to help with? The aerating of the water?
Well, it's a good
I'm not
question.
saying that it's sufficient or it's doing its job, but I think, isn't that the purpose of the fountain?
It is certainly a good reason to have a fountain in a pond like that, is for aeration.
And then also you had mentioned that something might be coming before us on the bus parking lot there.
Yes, all right. So I don't recall exactly what I left this with at, but the Garfield Street reconstruction project now incorporates pavement for the part of the Board of Ed parking area for their buses that is gravel. And there's a number of reasons why they requested this. The upside is that we're looking at, with a paved surface, you can actually delineate where buses should park and that kind of thing, which would give us the opportunity to pull some of that parking area away from the upland review area that it's in. It would also give me the opportunity to put a hydrodynamic separator or similar water quality device on the outlet of the storm drainage system that empties directly into that pond. So it's one of those right now, if the buses, for instance, are leaking any kind of fluid, which almost every motor vehicle does, it just goes into the gravel and seeps into the ground, which in that location is not ideal. So by paving it, we can channel that to the storm drainage and put it through a treatment device that would mitigate any of the negative effects of having that petroleum product in the brook.
Yeah, I think you explained that to us before, but so nothing has changed since then.
We're working on that plan for spring construction or maybe late spring construction, along with 2 or 3 other construction projects for spring. So now it's a matter of mostly finalizing the plans and writing the specs to put them out to bid with. And so these are all.
Is that something that has to go through this commission?
The wetlands aspect of that project, yes. The other projects I'm working on, no. So that's the only one I've got at the moment that would have to come before you. And it is because it's in the upland review area and because of the history of that site.
Thank you. All right, any other comments before we adjourn?
Yes, Jeff.
Go ahead,
I'd
Mr.
like to get-
Vasquez.
I'd like to get a report back from Chris at the next meeting as to how we're gonna proceed remediating this algae bloom. It's a serious consequence of chemistry in the water and around the water to humans and habitat and wildlife. And also I've heard that the water that's leaching into the pool has this chemical which comes from the algae bloom. So this is serious consequences if this is not remediated. It's not just a green substance in the water. It has significant consequences behind it. And I'd like to see something move forward on this because I've brought this up several times already.
Okay, points taken.
I'll see if I can have somebody from Park and Rec come up and address some of those issues. I know little, if anything, about.
Right. And that speculation.
I'd like to stay out of that myself.
Right.
Yeah, the whole pool referendum thing.
Again, leave that one to a professional to tell us.
Yeah.
All right, I'd just like to thank all the commissioners for their participation tonight. I thought there was a lot of really good questions that were asked. It was great to see everybody, in there, and, making really keen observations and, driving, some of the finer points, with, the very complex application. So thank you all for your, participation and dedication. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Get a second, please?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone have a good night.
Good holidays, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah.